Est-ce que tu peux, s'il te plaît, juste laisser
Bizarre, pourquoi t'as pas vu?
Parce que je me sens pas bien, ça arrive, tu vois.
Nobody is ever supposed to win, Motorama. I got all the letters.
Okay, this is HeadFever. I'm Jamie. I'm here with my friend Zach. Hey, Zach.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for joining me. This is our podcast. We're going to be talking about some movies today. The concept of this podcast is that Zach and I each pick a movie that the other one has not seen. That person must watch the movie completely blind without knowing anything about the film or why it was recommended. And then we meet up and we talk about our reactions to that film. Zach, is there anything else that I forgot about the podcast you want to mention?
No, it's been a trip already, that's for sure.
All right. So the first film that we're going to talk about is a film I recommended to Zach. It's Climax, 2018 film by Gaspare Noe. Zach, I didn't tell you why I picked this movie. You had no idea anything about it. Had you heard of it?
No.
Okay.
I'd never heard of it before.
All right. So you start us off. Tell me how you felt about Climax.
I have a lot to say. So I went in completely blind, as we discussed, and in the first 5 minutes, I think I decided I hated the movie.
Okay.
It opens up with a girl wandering through ice and snow, screaming and crying, and then she falls on the ground. She's bleeding, and she starts... I thought she was going to make a snow angel out of her blood, and I was just going to completely write this movie off at that point. And then it shows the ending title, which I don't want to sound like a moron, but I was a little confused by. And then it cuts to a bunch of people who I really hope I never have to meet anyone like them in real life, being interviewed.
Yeah, how would you describe the cast of characters in this film?
Wholly unlikable. I hated every single one of them with a passion.
So, can I ask you, when you were watching this film, did you think that I liked this movie and I was encouraging you to watch it because I thought it was awesome? Did that cross your mind?
I'll tell you what did cross my mind multiple times while watching the movie. I kept trying to wonder why you had me watch this movie. And I still don't know. I didn't come up with any leading theories. There are merits to the movie that we can discuss. It wasn't entirely without its charms. It's not my kind of movie, but I don't know. I left it not quite knowing how I felt about it. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to spill everything about it at once here.
Oh, we're gonna do ultimate spoilers, I think. Because I have to talk about this film.
We're going to do ultimate spoilers. Let's go through the whole movie.
I came up with this idea to give you this movie, and I hate this movie. I thought this is one of my least favorite films probably of 2020.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm really glad we're going to be on the same page here, because I got a lot of things to say that I didn't like.
And I will say, just as a side comment, when I watched the movie you assigned me, which we'll go over later at the second half of the podcast, I felt really bad about giving you Climax. So... Fun fact about Climax, it lost $1 million in the box office.
I can see that.
It was made in 4 weeks, and when I found that out, my response was, I can't fucking believe it took 4 weeks to make this. I thought it was filmed in a weekend.
I thought it was something like 4 days,
yeah. And I compare this movie in my mind to other films that did the same thing where they cast dancers instead of actors, so they can perform these really elaborate dance sequences, but nobody can act.
Right.
So like Save the Last Dance. But I would say that Save the Last Dance is actually a better, scarier film than Climax with better acting. And it actually had a script. So Climax didn't have a script. So when I was watching this movie, I remember thinking to myself, this movie should have been called A Trial in Patience, because it's just an hour and a half of listening to non-actors improv what they think dancers in their 20s would talk about while at a quote-unquote after party. And so it's really bad acting and really bad dialogue for an hour and a half.
You know what this movie was to me, ultimately? Have you ever seen that video of the girl performing. I use that word very loosely, where she's opening a can of SpaghettiOs, and I think it's supposed to be a metaphor for either like her period or childbirth or something, and the crowd is just filled with all these hipster kids who are enraptured like it's the most amazing thing they've ever seen. Climax was that stretched out for an hour and a half.
Yeah, it's Gaspare Noe's like arc de triomphe, his like masterpiece. And I don't get it.
That's his masterpiece?
Yeah, it won like best French film, I think, at some award. The critics love this movie, and I don't understand why. I get that it's ambitious, but I think it was extremely poorly executed. And the reasons why it was disliked by people was people thought it was too violent, and the story wasn't interesting enough. I felt I wanted more violence, because I agree, I hated every single character.
I really wanted more violence.
Maybe the main woman, the Sofia Boutella, the really pretty like main character. The one,
only relatively human-looking person in the movie.
And the only one that kind of even acts like a normal person. She was okay, but everyone else I didn't care about. They were just monstrous pieces of crap who I didn't even think could dance that well. But
no, it wasn't even dancing. It was just like if aliens came to Earth and saw like half an hour of VH1 and then decided that I could do that, and they tried to, and like that was what they would come up with.
And the main premise of the plot is that this dance troupe is rehearsing to go on tour, and they're rehearsing in an abandoned school for no reason. That's just where Gaspare Noe...
In the middle of nowhere during a snowstorm.
He based it on a true story that happened, I think, in the 90s, where a bunch of people got together in a school and did LSD.
And nothing happened.
And then called the cops because they got freaked out. And so that's the story. And then Gaspare Noe saw that and he went, that's amazing. I want to capture that energy. I want to capture that feeling.
What if I could make an adaptation of this story with a wholly unrealistic depiction of what it's like to be on LSD?
Yeah, so Gaspare Noe's clearly never done LSD in his life.
I don't think he's ever done any drug.
And I have a note here about Climax. It's like 6 exclamation points. It just says LSD doesn't do this. And I think that ruined the movie for me personally, is you find out maybe 20-30 minutes into the film what's happening. The film does not let you guess or be
You find out
unsure.
After a series of really unnecessary dance, I don't even know what to call them, scenes where everyone's just kind of flailing around, and the only thing I kept thinking about was like, when is this gonna end? Like, is this the entire movie? Is this the entire movie? Are you serious? It felt like an hour, the dance scenes.
Yeah, every minute felt like 20 minutes to me.
Yeah. That movie took all night for me to finish. It was like the whole time is relative thing stretched out to like the worst possible example.
Yeah, I felt cheated after the film, because I've never seen a Gaspare Noe movie except for Irreversible, which is obviously famous for being extremely grotesque. It has like a 9-minute rape scene.
Right.
So he obviously, enjoys pushing boundaries in cinema. And then I've never seen Into the Void, but I've heard really good things. So when I heard about Climax, I was like, oh, well, here he is going on another adventure into cinematic filmmaking. He's got, I think, one shot in the film is like 40 minutes uncut of improv dialogue where it's like dudes just standing in corners going, oh, I'd fuck her. No, you wouldn't. Yeah, I would, totally. Ugh. Really, I'd fuck her too. What? Everybody wants to fuck everybody.
Sounds like this movie.
That's the whole plot of Climax. It's just people sitting around pretending that they're having a conversation in front of a camera, and they have nothing to talk about because Gaspare Noe did not write a script. It was just dance, pretend you're on LSD, now freak out.
Well, he gave instructions to the cast to just kind of play things out and improv, as you said. And the problem with that is he gave that power to a bunch of people who had zero charisma and zero concept of how human beings actually talk to each other. And nothing that they talked about served to advance whatever little story there was at all.
Absolutely. It was that they picked dancers over actors. So if you had actors, at least, who've gone through improv classes or at least have that performance training for dialogue, at least you would have something there. But they only dance in the first 4 minutes of the movie, and then they never dance again. So the whole time, like, why would you bother hiring dancers in role of actors when 99% of the movie is going to have to rely on their acting abilities. And they can't act. And they're making up the dialogue. And then the reactions that they're having on LSD is lighting their hair on fire, accidentally like locking their kids in with
breaking their own bones while like contorting into inhuman shapes,
fucking their brother. Like, remember when we used to get high in high school and have incest?
Yeah.
Like, that's what happens when you get...
I mean, the last time I did LSD, I chased my sister down in an auditorium with a bunch of crazy people and raped her in front of everybody.
I couldn't stop writhing around outside in the snow until I froze to death.
Ironically, her name was also Gazelle.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that.
That was stuck in my head for the rest of the night. Not the scene or like any other part of the movie, but just the dude going, Gazelle! Gazelle! Gazelle!
I just, like I said before, I felt bad for making you watch this film without any context, but I wanted it to be a raw feeling. I didn't want you to go in knowing how I felt about it, because that's the concept of this podcast is... we won't know why, and we have to go in completely blind so that we can just let the film speak to us. And we may have differing opinions, but Climax is unfucking watchable, in my opinion.
It is an unwatchable movie, and it's one of those experiences where typically when I go into something raw, I don't have a bad time, but this is one of those times where thinking back about it, like, I have so many things I want to say about how much I hated that movie at one time that they're all just like getting stuck at the doorway and they can't come out.
There's so much wrong with it. I will say I considered rewatching it again before we met up, and I couldn't do it. If that speaks to the level of like disgust that I have for the film. I literally couldn't sit down and watch it again because I knew that what I was in for. And even going back through and reading the Wikipedia synopsis and even looking at pictures of it online, I was having like flashbacks to watching it and just going, oh my god, like I'm already pissed off, I'm already bored, and I'm not even watching the film, I'm just reading about the film.
You know, I don't want to really I don't want to jump all over the place here, but I did want to say something about the quote unquote reveal at the end of the movie where it turns out the one girl is responsible for dosing everybody.
The German girl.
Yeah, who earlier during her interview specifically brought up like she was leaving Germany for like drug use. Like she didn't like everybody in like the club scene in Berlin using drugs. And she talked about how she had a roommate that used to put acid directly into her eyes. And then the movie ends and she's sitting in her room like putting acid directly into her eyes. And I just didn't understand why the weird lie. Like,
yeah, because there's no plot.
There's no
like,
plot.
There's
it meant nothing. Like it's not even a reveal. It's just like a.
Oh,
also,
the
I
chick
can't
with
think of
acid
anybody.
put the acid in the punch. Who
I can't think of anybody who would have cared enough to like look at that scene and be like, like it's not like a fucking Kaiser Soze reveal. It's
That's why
it's nothing. It was a non-element.
That's why I felt Save the Last Dance was a scarier, more like more gut-wrenching film. And I also compared this movie to Suspiria, which is not fair because Suspiria, the new and the old, are really, really good films that revolve around dance.
I haven't seen either of them.
Plot device. Maybe I'll recommend one of those too for the podcast, but I just let you know that how I feel about them.
Well, at least I know what I'm going into because I have a vague understanding of what they're like. But you know, this movie fucking sucked. It was fucking terrible. I saw The Bye Bye Man, and I fucking hated The Bye Bye Man, and it was a better movie than Climax.
So we're gonna not recommend Climax, people.
No, don't watch this movie. Like, I don't care if you think you're some pretentious art house person who would like get it. You won't. There's nothing to get. Don't watch the movie. It's a waste of time.
I mean, you would have a better experience sitting at a bar or a restaurant and just eavesdropping on people's real conversations.
Don't take a date to see this, and definitely do not take a sibling to see this.
It might actually be fun to watch it on LSD, though. Now that I think about it.
You know, if I watched on LSD, I wouldn't be able to stop talking shit about the movie.
Yeah.
And I'd have to make up my own movie out of what's going on.
That's why I would be able to enjoy it, because I would be able to get out of the moment in my head and escape to someplace better and more entertaining.
I've taken LSD multiple times, and like the most climactic thing that's ever happened is we went and got ice cream. Like, I never felt compelled to like set myself on fire or lock my kid in like an electrical cabinet or dance until I broke my limbs.
Right. Or kick a pregnant woman in the stomach.
Yeah, or get violent out of nowhere for no reason.
Yep.
Or get paranoid and like accuse people of things.
So it's a no or thumbs down for Climax.
Huge thumbs down.
Excellent.
Not only both thumbs down, but like both toes down,
Excellent.
like both large toes.
Well, I'm glad that we at least share the same opinion of it, because if you liked it, I was gonna have some very serious questions and assessment questions for you.
So what I said earlier about like it having like some merit to it, those merits are very minuscule, and it's really just like a couple shots that I thought were really well done. Like there's one scene where the main girl is kind of like walking back into the whatever the hell it is, the auditorium, and like it's kind of at a canted angle, and there's a guy in the background who's like doing his like weird contortion thing. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a really well shot scene. Come to think of it, I think that was like the only fucking good thing about that whole thing.
I feel like he ramped up the contrast really high, so all the colors are really saturated. So
I like the saturation of the colors. Yeah.
I thought the scene with the girl's hair on fire was actually shot pretty well, considering. Like it looked pretty good. For like the special effects, makeup, and the acting in that scene was pretty legit.
Right.
But I don't remember any single person's name. I don't remember any unique characteristic about anyone. I can't tell you anything that set one person apart from the other aside from haircuts, that kind of stuff.
So here's what I remember of the cast. There's the main girl, who is otherwise completely a non-character.
Yeah.
She has no role to play whatsoever. There's nothing that develops about her, and the only thing that she winds up doing is fending off the advances of a drunk dude who everyone talks about being a philanderer. Who I don't see why anybody would want to fuck that guy. He was just wholly disgusting at every level. And then she winds up hooking up with the other girl who kept trying to hook up with German girl the entire movie and kept getting, turned away. There was the black dude number one who was the closest to having any kind of like personality, who kept talking about fucking people, and like there was that disgusting scene where he's talking to his buddy and then talking about like
who in the
sex.
room they would have
who in the room they'd have sex with, who
yeah.
they've had sex with, and he's like, you have this, this is just how it is. You have to know what you're going into. Sometimes it's dirty and sometimes it isn't, which is just completely revolting.
And no man in the movie that I saw was anybody that I thought had game.
No.
But according to the characters in the movie, all the men in this troupe are like super fuckable.
None of them were.
And I was
Not a single one of them.
I was like bullshit. I was like, there's no way that these characters would feel this way about these guys. They're completely repulsive.
There was the DJ who got a wig somehow and wore it for the rest of the movie. Who retired to a bedroom with the guy that wore like the cut off halter top
and then
shirt.
they got married or something.
Something,
they ended
I
up
don't know.
together. They ended up actually the safest of everyone, I think.
Yeah.
Was the two of them.
They definitely did. They were also, I think the two of them were probably the least reprehensible people. There were a couple scenes in which people were going to the DJ for like help, but he just kind of turned them away. But at the same time, like, what do you expect somebody to do in that situation?
Yeah, and he's high too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody's high. So I think they got away pretty cleanly. The woman with the kid definitely had the worst out of it.
I laughed for a good 30 seconds when the kid died.
When the power went out and she screamed.
Because the movie's amping up, and she realizes her kid drank the spiked sangria, and so she doesn't want him around everyone else that's like either fucking or fighting each other. And so she locks him in with the circuit breaker for the school and loses the key. So there's a subplot D or E or F somewhere in the movie of all this chaos of her in the background screaming and looking under chairs and couches trying to find the key.
Subplot I for I don't fucking care about these characters.
And at one point in the movie, someone makes a comment about how they hope that he doesn't touch the circuit breaker.
So it's when she locks him in the room, the circuit breaker like cabinet is open and the camera like turns and looks at it ominously, and she closes it and she goes, "Don't touch that.
That's right.
Don't touch that."
That's right.
Which is about as subtle as a train wreck.
Yeah. So that's why I'm saying this movie is it just doesn't leave you guessing or thinking or anything. It's just here's what's happening. We're just gonna throw this at you.
Right.
And then maybe like it felt like 2 hours later, but I'm sure it was only like 30-40 minutes later. The power goes out in the school, and you're supposed to connect the dots that the boy did in fact touch the circuit breaker. And I started laughing because it was such a relief to have like a plot
take it out of the
connect,
movie
yes.
that you don't have to worry about anymore.
Well, and then also just like setup and exexecution. And I was like, there you go. Like, don't touch the circuit breaker.
Something
40
happened
minutes
in this
later,
movie.
lights go out. All right, we're back in the story, and I felt like it was just comedic timing because there's so much fucking chaos going on, and then of course the kid like kills himself, which is just again like grotesquely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then the mom kills herself intentionally at the end of the movie.
Right outside the door.
Right outside the door. She never gets the door open.
Yeah.
So he could have been in there unconscious or,
Also, I don't know if you've ever seen what people look like when they get electrocuted by like high voltage or high amperage currents, but when they show the kid's body at the end of the movie, he looks fine.
Yeah.
He doesn't even have
okay.
like scorched hands or anything.
He's fine. That's what I was saying. Maybe he was asleep. We don't even know because the movie doesn't really care that we get any information on what's happening.
I don't think the movie cared about anything, honestly.
I don't think they thought about it. Well, thank you for watching it and for talking to me about it. And we won't watch it again.
Yeah,
we won't recommend it to people.
So in closing, if we're moving on to anybody that might be listening to this at any point in history, 1, don't watch the movie. 2, if you want to bring up the fact that there was just like a 40-something minute like long take in the movie, I don't care. It wasn't impressive. Nothing happened. It's not hard to shoot a long take when there's nothing going on and you don't need to rehearse anything. It's not impressive.
Yeah, trial and patience.
Yeah,
that's what I'm calling that.
Trial and patience.
That movie.
Fucking waste of time.
Run.
This has been another episode of HeadFever Podcast. Send your comments and complaints to theheadfeverpodcast@gmail.com.